Hello and welcome back to the TelecomTV Summit on 5G Evolution and our panel discussion on telco strategies for supporting private 5G. There is so much talk about private 5G deployments, but what are the actual demand that telcos are seeing from businesses and enterprise customers? Why do telcos think they are best placed to provide private 5G? And how exactly are they going to meet this demand? Well, with the help of today's guests, we are going to find out. And joining me on the programme today are Aaron Partouche, who is Global Vertical Principal Director at Colt Technology Services, Terje Jensen, SVP Head of Global Network Architecture and Director of the 5G Readiness Strategic Programme at Telenor, Fernando Lopez, Partner, Head of Network Business and Operations Services Practice for Telecom Sector Europe at NTT Data, and Howard Wu, who is Global Head of Networks and General Manager for QCT USA. Hello everyone, it's very good to see you all. Thanks so much for taking part in our discussion today. Let's get straight to it because private 5G is the big new hope. But what demand are telcos seeing for private 5G contracts in terms of volume and also specific verticals? Terje, what about you? What demand are you currently seeing for private 5G?
No, thanks for the question, Guy. I think it's of course an excellent question which we are all struggling with. So Telenor, we are engaged with a market survey in a couple of the European countries just to sample, the market and the enterprise customers. What have they ever even heard about private 5G and what do you foresee as their needs? And it was a bit maybe on the optimistic side. It was a bit positive feedback that more than 2/3 of the enterprise customers actually saw a need for themselves to benefit from a private network. And then, of course, and it was also maybe a bit surprising that this, at least for the sample of the European countries what we looked at, it was quite similar numbers across different countries and also across different industries. Of course, the different industries in different countries are varying. So it's not to say that exactly the same demand will appear on the same time in the different countries, but it was very similar across these different industries and the different countries on that survey. Then, of course, the way we are approaching private 5G and or private network in general is that we are saying that there are various ways to deliver it, which you probably are coming back in later in the session. For example, with isolated or dedicated network versus using the wide area network. Then we have a number of use cases. I think we had the Capital Markets Day in Telenor last week, where we showcased a number of industries and where we have delivered, and it's still, of course, fairly on the low side when it comes to the meaning within the single-digit number of commercial cases. But when you look at the number of customer cases in the pipeline, there are several tens of cases just within a single country. So the demand is building up. I think across different industries, we have been engaging in health, transportation, logistics, mining, constructions, search and rescue, for example, fish farming, oil and gas, and all those industries. And we see that they are getting to the table and they are also triggering the request themselves. I would say that typically this is triggered by their need for what they call digitalization. It's also triggered by they have heard about 5G. They heard about cloud. They see a need for change, for example, on efficiency, improving safety and so forth. So the demand is there. I think it has manifested. As I said, we have delivered a number of commercial cases already and the pipeline is actually growing.
Thanks, Terje. And as you say, we will be looking at specific approaches in a moment or two. But as you said, there's a huge demand there. It's a very surprising, large percentage of companies expressing interest. Howard, what about you? What are you seeing in terms of demand for private 5G contracts?
Thank you. I think, first of all, thank you for inviting us to the panel. It's a fantastic opportunity. I think from a global regional standpoint, we're seeing different pickup speeds. I think right now, Asia and parts of Europe are doing private 5G in a very practical way, meaning we've done cases where, in terms of smart manufacturing, private 5G manufacturing. And it could be related to how humans and robots and worker safety are related, right? So if you do subscribe to the thought that the network is the backplane and that all of the devices on top of that network with private 5G, you now have the ultra low latency possibility that wasn't possible. So we're also seeing pickup, for example, in cases of private 5G enabled veteran hospitals. We're also seeing, private 5G enabled agriculture use cases, and even to municipality and citywide senior care and fall prevention. Now, these are all use cases and real world deployments and use cases that QCT are already involved in. I think North America market, it is still in the pickup and the early phases of proof of concept. And I think there's a lot of, whether it's a cloud service provider, a telecom service provider, people are trying to find their corner of the room in terms of which use cases and which services they actually anchor themselves in.
Thanks very much, Howard. As you say, it's early days. We're all sort of fighting for space and trying to define our roles. But it's quite a wide range of vertical sectors expressing interest. Fernando, what about you? Are you seeing a similar thing?
Yeah, I'm seeing something similar from NTT. We detected a lot of interest on this technology. But let me say that we think that we are still in a very early stage. We have a huge demand, but we are still deploying a lot of trials, and our clients are trying to understand exactly the business case behind the adoption of this technology. Now, this is something important to remark. We are demonstrating in many cases that a positive business case exists. It's difficult because we don't have a huge amount of use cases, still don't have a huge amount of use cases to implement, but this is something that is being resolved through these specific trials that we are launching. But if we talk about contracts, about the industrialization of the deployment of this technology, we're far from there at this moment. This is our understanding. We are working in different sectors. We found that huge interest in automotive, in transportation. I'm talking about ports, airports, in specific industries that are not present in all countries, such as mining, for instance, or agro. We detect also a lot of interest and potential business cases behind the implementation of this technology for these specific industries. In others, even when we found a lot of interest, we are still looking for the killer application for them in terms of use case. Many consortium working on this. We are collaborating with CSPs, with vendors. I guess that the integrators such as consulting companies are very relevant to provide the sectorial or the industrial knowledge needed to support the use cases. And this is basically the situation that we see at this moment.
Thank you, Fernando. And as you say, there has to be a valid business case that drives all this interest. Let's consider the options for those telcos who do want to provide private 5G and investigate the pros and cons of some of the main approaches. Can we first start by looking at the partnership approach, partnering with vendors, perhaps just to operate the networks? What are the benefits and disadvantages of this approach? And Aaron, perhaps I could turn to you for comments on this.
Yes, indeed. Partnership is key, clearly in this ecosystem, and it's what has been said just before. Fernando was giving a lot of examples, and I was quite in line, but we need to justify about the business case. We need to talk about use case always, and not only talking about technology. So this is one of the key challenges on private 5G. Vendors can be helpful to simplify and operate a network, and let us focusing on use case and business case. So this is where I see a real value from the vendors. The cons that I could see, at least on the numerous engagement we have with vendors, is that we are not yet at a stage where vendors are completely providing, or for most of them, a real as a service approach. And maybe it's cultural in other actors like cloud service providers that used to provide that. But this is the kind of cons that I see. I mean, we vendors we see a lot of engagement, and they are indeed more and more engaged and more developing partnership models, but still not fully providing as a service that could. When I'm talking about as a service, we talk about also integration of device. We may also need to integrate the private 5G with applications because again, at the end, customers are talking use case, are talking business case, and not talking about the technology behind. I know that it's quite complex. I mean, we are talking about cellular technologies that are very complex, 3G, 4G, 5G, and they can bring this expertise and simplify that and not not forcing us to be expert on 5G. So this is the reason why vendors could help. But yes, the other stack of the partnership are quite key, and this is where there is still a gap when we are just partnering with vendors.
Thanks, Aaron. So expect to see more maturity in the services that are provided through vendor partnerships. Terje, what about you? What are your thoughts to this?
Yeah, no, I fully agree with Aaron was saying. I think partnership, as we see it, is very fundamental, and that includes also the traditional vendors, if I may say. And then if you break the private network into different components, and I think it's also what Aaron was saying, that you should start with what is the customer problem to be solved in a way. And typically the customers, it doesn't only include the base stations and having coverage. Includes the devices, it includes the applications. There needs to be a portal for self-serving. There needs to be a number of network components, of course. There's operations, there's security, there's analytics applications. There's even a go-to-market activity to be done. And some partnering across with the vendors for all these areas is something we are using actually in the different markets. And you will see that, in my mind at least, the different models will be there. Probably not be at least on the short term one model which will be the winning one. And one simple reason for that is actually even the enterprise customers have their preferences. So sometimes they have a preferred device vendor, they have a preferred operation partner they want to use. They have maybe an integrator they are used to apply and so forth. And that's the landscape where we as a telco need to maneuver. So partnership is very fundamental, and you need to partner with a lot of these different companies.
Thanks very much, Terje. And as you were saying, trying to understand the specific needs of the customer leads us very nicely to our next topic, really, another approach to private 5G. What about telcos offering a complete solution from design to deployment to operation, bespoke solutions tailored right down to an individual requirements of a specific customer, going after one contract at a time? This to me sounds very labor intensive, but is this a viable approach? Howard, what do you think?
Well, given sort of our footprint, Quanta, we're one of the world's largest manufacturer of large scale infrastructure. So when we deploy this global infrastructure across different regions, one of our priorities is always, well, where do you put the layer of differentiation, right? And so from a hardware versus a software side, you want to have let's say a limited SKU count to make the hardware side of infrastructure easier to manage. And however, like we said earlier about different 5G use cases, every business problem that all of us are trying to solve requires a different set of KPI and tooling. So where does that customization come in? I think for most of the telecoms of the world, the customization should come in from understanding your client's business, understanding the return they're looking for, and then how do you use software layer to manage the hardware to lower your total cost of ownership, or on the OpEx side, right? And right now we have a huge surge and sort of demand in energy. So how do you manage that across a very distributed network infrastructure? And then on the private 5G side, really delivering business results, right? I think I heard somebody say earlier, we're really not in the business of talking about, 3G, 4G, 5G base stations and core networks in terms of the technology, but what can the technology do for my business? Does it make me run faster? Does it make me jump higher? Does it give me better yields? What kind of KPI is this technology stack delivering for me? So I think the customization of all of these different verticals, and this is where I think the telecom industry traditionally approaches the entire stack from a highly customizable standpoint. But now it's really, taking sort of a playbook out of the IT world, going through that disaggregation process, and then figuring out where do you want to manage and customize to deliver to customer results. And I think the answer really is in that top layer of that software layer, providing the business insights and the data analytics that actually triggers meaningful action that delivers business KPI.
That's interesting, Howard. Thanks very much. Because we as an industry, telcos have been trying to understand corporate customers for many, many years, as long as I've been in the business, and trying to understand where the differentiation should come in. Fernando, let's get some thoughts from you on this approach.
Yeah, regarding this potential approach for CSPs to offer bespoke solutions, very tailored, I sincerely believe that this is not the regular business of most of our clients, the CSPs. They are not prepared in most cases to offer these kind of services, and it's really complex and requires a lot of effort, such as you said before, in order to follow this strategy. They traditionally try to standardize as much as possible the offer. This is the way how they can scale up the business around this. And probably to start doing in a new business like this, the integration, that is the typical work that they used to do with system integrators and other third parties, is probably a strategy very complex. It depends obviously of the kind of CSP we are talking about. No, not all of them are in the same page. No, some of them are large companies prepared for this kind of services, but others are small and don't have the capability to invest on creating this new capability in the company. So there is no single answer for this, but in general terms, if we talk in general terms, our understanding is that this probably is not the best approach for the CSPs if they want to move forward alone. If they understand this as a strategy that they can follow together with integrators and with vendors, probably yes, no. But it depends, as I said before, on the specific capabilities of the company.
Thank you, Fernando. As you say, it's a complex approach, and the telcos exist in different sizes with different capabilities, different resources. Maybe it appeals to the larger telcos, but the smaller ones are obviously a bit more constrained. Terje, what thoughts do you have?
Yeah, just quickly, I think that what we are applying right now is what we call a nail and scale approach. That means that we are sitting down with individual customers, enterprises, and in the dialogue, what is the problem to start with, and what we want to fix first, and then you're building on that, and then of course into more cases with the same customers. But at the same time, you need to emphasize this scale approach, and I think Howard covered that as well. That we need to link into the kind of what are the modules, or call it components or elements or whatever, which can be turned into products. And also these components needs to be reusable across different customer cases. And that's the way we are thinking about scaling, scaling the elements, rather scaling the components and not necessarily scaling a tailored or vertical specific solution. And it's also where we are talking about these components that we actually are also facing this discussion about partners. So by reaching out to partners, we are actually further leveraging the scale from the partners on this component level. But this requires a rather different approach to the whole enterprise markets, as also was commented earlier, meaning that we need to define these modules and then pick and choose and rather personalize or individualize, tailor make each of the components through configuration, and then put together the components which are needed to solve the specific customer problems. So it's not. So I'm not saying it's easy to do, but we are on the journey then, of course, to turn this into different product components, which will then be in a catalog and then eventually also be sold on the markets. I think it's also an indication actually of where the maturity of the market is, that we have to chase a bit on the enterprise customers, defining the problem to be solved, solving that, and then rather also illustrate and visualize the value, like a return on investment, for example, for the customers, only almost case by case. But of course, eventually, we hope that turns into products which we have on the shelf and can configure it to solve their problems for the larger scale.
Oh, good insight there. Thanks very much, Terje. And I do love that phrase, nail and scale. That really sums it up nicely. Let's look at another approach here. We've got one more approach that I'd like to discuss, and that's the idea of telcos selling a more simplified, private 5G in a box solution, something that's one size fits all. Aaron, do you think this is a solution that's viable and it could work?
I think it will be great. So let's say it will be great to just activate. Now we have a fully disaggregated functionalities on 5G. So in ideal world, it will be great to activate 5G where we need to activate 5G on the same box where we are deploying our SD-WAN, our firewalls or whatever. So ideal world, it will be great. The reality is a bit different because in reality, we were talking about the different verticals, different type of use case, but also, in fact, behind it's at the end different type of topology that we need to deploy on 5G. We deployed in our side an Open RAN 5G network, and clearly we could not deploy everything in the box because some element of the Open RAN was quite consuming. So it was still, even if we succeed to deploy that in a flight case, so it was simple to install, it was not in a box. So clearly the target will be great, at least for actors like us that are selling connectivity to different type of enterprise and try to automate maximum of functionalities. But we are not yet there, both because of the technology that is not exactly the same depending on the verticals. We don't have exactly the same requirements. And because some of these solution may not be just working in a box, or maybe for some simple deployment, it could work. So it could work for if we just target specific verticals maybe, and but not really maybe the one that are the most important today, are the one that are requiring the most complex network.
Thanks, Aaron. So a good idea, but we might need a bit of a reality check on this approach, certainly at this moment in time. Terje, let me come back to you because you were just talking about the ideal goal of getting products on the shelf that you can then customize and sell. So what do you think of the one-size-fits-all private 5G in a box approach?
I think the short answer is sorry, no, it doesn't work. Of course, it solves some of the problem, and actually some of the customers are asking for a 5G in a box solution, and they are happy to start with that. So it works in some cases, but we see that a lot of the customer cases actually are, when you're thinking about how they are going to evolve it further. The in-a-box solution doesn't cover all the cases. For example, they really want to wide area mobility. They want to track, for example, some IoT devices, and they are sometimes in the factory, sometimes out of the factory. So there are all these kind of future use cases as well, which needs to be covered in the discussion there. So of course it's 5G in a box, and we are selling 5G in the box. So that's part of the portfolio what we have. But we are also selling other solutions for mobile private networks. Again, it's good to have this in the portfolio, and you probably need it in the portfolio to serve the broader request from the customers. But also keep in mind that the customer demands are evolving, and then you need to respond to also a future demand where probably 5G in a box doesn't cover all these kind of use cases. Either it comes to operational, it comes to new services, it comes to wide area mobility and so forth. So it's probably an okay starting point, but it's also need to evolve, and you need to prepare for that going forward.
Thanks, Terje. Fernando, is private 5G in a box a concept that's perhaps too early, too ahead of its time, or perhaps really is taking us down the wrong road to begin with? What do you think?
I don't see it as something unapplicable in our business. Actually, I guess this is in some cases is a need. Why I see it's a need? Because in many implementations that we have done, I'm talking about trials, we found, and I spoke about it before, that we need a business case to support the investment. No? And with a single use case, it's difficult to do it. This is what we already found, implementing solutions in ports, in airports, in automotive industry. And what we understand is that we need a set of use cases, and let me say a starter kit, that could make feasible the investment for the client, providing enough functionality to start working with transforming their existing business, and use it as a starting point to grow and grow in different use cases, but starting from a point that is actually feasible in terms of return of the investment. And for some specific, and I agree about that with my colleagues, for some specific industries, this is applicable to create in a box, let me say, industry-specific solutions for 5G as a starter kit to start doing business with this technology, and then grow and grow progressively in improving the set of use cases implemented. But I guess that the approach for some specific industries would be very beneficial and will accelerate the adoption of this technology.
Thanks, Fernando. So we're still looking at an industry-specific approach here. Howard, what about you? What are your thoughts?
Well, I figure I might as well chime in on the 5G in a box approach. I think the idea is enabling a private 5G, have it stand up quickly. But then most of the enterprises, the question will be, okay, great. Now that I have my private 5G network, how does it help my business, right? So I think it's that last part of the question where do we have the capabilities to stand up a private 5G in a box? Absolutely. What does it do to my customer's business, and how does it enable their lives to be better? I think that's where the more of the conversation is heading to. And just given in our use cases and some of our experiences, for example, we've worked with a municipality in Asia where we enable private 5G for the entire city, and the end device is a car that drives around with a camera looking for seniors or elders who potentially have, are in danger. For example, if they experience a fall. So it's part of this citywide fall prevention program that quickly then sends a signal to either the hospitals or the police station to quickly help these seniors, right? So these are the type of use cases, for example, better care, for example, more efficient in your private 5G enabled manufacturing facility. We do work with customers who have more than 50 robots, for example, moving around in a factory floor. How do you cover the dead spots? How do you guarantee ultra low latency? How do you guarantee the robots doesn't run into or run over a human, between worker safety, between efficiency, between route planning, load bearing? So there's a lot of potential KPIs in these private 5G enabled, whether it's a manufacturing site or a city or a port. And we're definitely we're definitely deployed in a lot of live use cases, and we're starting to measure these KPIs, and then that becomes a more meaningful conversation.
Thanks, Howard. Well, thanks everyone for your comments on that approach. Lots of fascinating views there. So, okay, however telcos approach this market, what are the main common selling points for telcos? Why are telcos the best placed companies to provide private 5G networks and services? Fernando, let me come across to you first.
Okay, in terms of potential advantage that we can find in the CSPs when they go to sell this kind of services, well, there is one that is probably obvious in some countries, that is the spectrum. No, in some countries the spectrum is only available for CSPs, so there is a limited access for other companies to provide these kind of services, or at least alone. No, they need to collaborate with a CSP in any case to provide these kind of services. This is the case of different countries in Europe and globally as well. But not true for all the countries. For sure, in some of them, the spectrum is available for private sector, and in that case, the position of the CSPs is absolutely different. Other very relevant aspect is the knowledge on this kind of on connectivity services that the CSPs traditionally have. They have been deploying and operating networks for many years. They have the people skilled to do this, and they know they have not only the capacity but also the knowledge to provide this kind of services. If we combine this, the spectrum aspect and the knowledge and capacity of the telcos to not only to deploy but also to operate the networks, this makes the CSPs a very strong player in this area. Obviously, one private company could try to deploy and operate their own network, but they don't have this kind of skills. They don't have the people to create this new capability. Will require a huge investment, and the complexity of the management, even when we are talking about simple networks, will add a risk for the regular operations that are not the core business of this company. So our understanding is that the CSPs are very well positioned. Obviously, they need to collaborate with vendors, integrators, and other companies in order to provide a full set of services, but they will be part of the ecosystem for this new business that is coming.
Thank you, Fernando. And as you say, a lot of CSPs paid a lot of money for 5G spectrum, and they are determined to get some return on investment on that. Terje, what about you? What are your thoughts about why telcos are best placed to provide private 5G?
Yeah, thanks. So since I'm working in a telco, of course, we are the best ones to provide 5G because we know 5G. And it's like Fernando was saying that we have been working on several generations, so we believe we have a proven track record of actually delivering mobile services, including 5G. So of course, telco knows connectivity. It's their bread and butter. It's the basic core business. As I said, we are delivering critical services and have been delivering critical services for years. Meaning services which goes into business and mission critical things. And we also are certified by the authorities on the national level. So they are kind of putting a stamp on the telcos. We have to comply with a lot of local regulations and laws in order to provide them mobile services, which then of course are also applicable for private 5G. So I said we have a proven experience, not only on operating it, but also on how to design it, how to plan it, how to implement it, and also how to further develop it. And a lot of the customers are actually also, as we discussed earlier, they don't want only to discuss the initial step. They also want to make sure that when they're starting on this, they can build that into further new use cases, new applications, and also solve future problems. Then maybe one of the biggest arguments when we are talking with some of the enterprises is that for us, security is not something that comes on top or in addition. Security needs to be embedded, which is something we have proven also as part of providing a public mobile network. And if you look into the statistics on cybersecurity attacks and what's happening there, we are living in that world every day. And we are able to show how that we can combat with those attacks. Then, like also Fernando walked through, we have the spectrums, devices, different assets, we have partners and so on. And one of the key maybe factors as well is that a lot of these enterprises are already our customers. They are in the customer base of our telco already. Of course, with a bit of different services, but still they are already a customer of telcos.
Thanks, Terje. And as you say, telcos are the connectivity experts here. Aaron, I want to come across to you for some thoughts on this as well. We've covered off a lot of things here, connectivity, experience, security. Why do you think telcos are best placed?
Indeed, exactly what you said. I mean, telco are, the connectivity expert, the trusted partner for most of the enterprise. Colt, we have 25,000 enterprise customers, various verticals, and so on. So you can imagine that they see us as a trusted partner to deliver the connectivity. On top of that, we are managing also wider projects, that are not just talking about private 5G. Private 5G could be part of a full digitalization of a site with IT, OT integration, a refresh of the OT network that would require private 5G and that is integrated with some application hosted in the cloud with preferential access that we can provide through the connectivity. So it could be part of a much bigger project than just talking about private 5G or deliver 5G connectivity. And as we said, and it has been said several times, and completely in line with all these comments, at the end we are particularly on private 5G answering to a business case, answering to a new usage that our end customer would like to either experiment or to implement when they already experimented. So telco have this kind of trusted and customer intimacy with the enterprise. Indeed, we need to partner with application providers to also sometimes cover the full stack because, again, it's all about use case at the end. But we have this channel, we have this communication, and we have this trust with the enterprise, particularly on the connectivity part. Reason why telco should have a key role in this market.
Thank you, Aaron. A trusted partnership is so important. I just want to finish this session with a quick look at where this leaves network slicing, and I'm sure this is something that will come up in our live Q&A later. This was promised ahead of private 5G as like a killer app for enterprise businesses, but here we are, 2022. We're still looking for network slicing. Fernando, perhaps I could come to you for some quick comments about. Do we still need network slicing? Will it still happen? Will it be complementary?
For sure. Let me say that when we talk about the 5G, we shouldn't talk only about the technology itself. There are many technologies around that integrated with 5G will provide huge value. And this is the case of network slicing, as other example could be Open RAN and others that combined with 5G provides a new scenario with very relevant benefits for the CSPs. Network slicing, we all know the concept of the technology. At the end of the day, is the ability to, in real time, configure or assign capacity and quality, service quality to one specific user or group of users on demand. And this is a technology that is not, at this moment, is not mature enough. Most of the operators or CSPs are testing this technology. We are part of different projects collaborating with CSPs, testing in their labs this technology, not only in terms of the usage, but also in the terms of operations, because it requires a high level of automation to work with. But it will provide a huge universe of new ways of operating the network, but also providing new services, a new set of services to our clients on demand. We have been working in this area recently with Telefónica, for instance, in the creation of one catalyst for the TM Forum that we presented last week, where we demonstrated the usage of network slicing to optimize the customer experience of the clients. No, this is a very, for instance, very relevant usage. No, we can dynamically optimize the quality of the service perceived by the clients using this specific technology, and this is an existing functionality that can be implemented and is being tested in different areas. Also can be used to sell, as I said before, new services on demand. Our clients can ask for additional capacity or new or additional quality on their services on demand for a specific moment or for any reason, and this can be applied in real time. This is something that will optimize dramatically the usage of the capacity available on the CSP's network, and will be a new source of revenues for them in the near future. We expect, but in the future in any case. As I said before, the adoption is low at this moment. Combined with 5G, will provide a huge value, and we expect the implementation in a massive way in the short term.
Thanks, Fernando. And Terje, is network slicing still on the agenda?
Yes, from our side, yes, fully so. So we are using or looking into network slicing for isolating and prioritizing traffic according to the different customer cases, and that could be applied in the 5G in a box, or it could even be applied in the wide area network. And I fully agree with Fernando. I think the maturity of the ecosystem are a bit different depending on the use cases, of course. So actually, we have showed a couple of customer cases there. We have actually put them even on YouTube. So if you can look at those yourself, which is actually a couple of examples. For example, on 5G in a box, which is then put on a trailer, so it could be moved around depending on the needs. So it's a search and rescue use case, for example, where you will pull the trailer where there's an incident and people are supported then with drones or body-mounted cameras. Or there could also be a media, which is then the trailer is moved to where there's a sports stadium. In Norway, there are typically some skiing events in the wintertime, a bit on the rural side, so the coverage is not maybe there all the time. So you drag the trailer there and actually do the on-site, on-campus for the sports event editing before you forward those streams back to the main studio. So for that, it's important to prioritize and isolate traffic in those use cases. And that's where network slicing is still on our agenda and is one of the tools what we're going to apply in all these cases.
Great, thanks very much, Terje. Well, we must leave it there. Thank you all very much indeed for taking part in our discussion today and sharing all your views. Now, if you're watching this on day one of our 5G Evolution Summit, then please send us your questions and we'll answer them in our live Q&A program, which follows this show. So don't go away, please keep watching. And if you missed any of the programs from day one, don't worry, they will all be available to watch on demand from tomorrow. For now though, thank you for watching and goodbye.